All right, are we feeling a little courageous today? Unsure, perfect. All right, if I have a question for you, and if you are willing, you may raise your hand. Who here believes in miracles? Oh, we got a few people, I love this. So, miracles, this is not something that Unitarian Universalists normally ask each other. Last weekend during middle hour, I helped facilitate a conversation. 17 of us came, entitled, What UUs Believe in Jesus. And a lot of us expressed to have a deep relationship with Jesus, or to find him to be a really important spiritual model, prophet, source. But a number of people noted yes to Jesus, but no to miracles. And I think there's a little skepticism. Like, we're like, miracles? I'm not so sure about that. And yet, this is the time of spring, a time when we move from how cold and frozen and stuck the world is, and sometimes our thinking is, and sometimes our spirit is, into a time of thaw and movement and rebirth. Isn't there something in this season and in the holiday of Easter that invites us to believe that which is often a little bit of like something we hope for that seems a little bit beyond reach, and almost an impossible hope? I want to tell you a story of impossible hope. So when I was in Indianapolis, there was this young man who was, he and his family were in my congregation. And ever since he was in 9th grade, he used to go with his buddies from school down camping in southern Indiana. And there was this small river, and above it was one of those kind of like low bridges that go over it. And they would love going up on that bridge and jumping over and splashing down. And they would do this over and over again and just swim in the river. And yet, the year after college, they did this again. And this wasn't a really important one because it was a time when they came back together, because life leads you away from each other sometimes. And he jumped and went down into the water and was coming on up when one of his friends jumped on him and broke his back. And his body naturally rose, but he was face down. And his friends were calling to him, concerned, and went over quickly because they were paying attention, and turned him over so he could breathe, and pulled his body gently to the shore and called an ambulance. That young man went from sort of the peak age of virility and life and all his athleticism, which was a real thing for him, to not being able to get out of a chair. And he and his parents sat with that grief, not even knowing how to face it. He couldn't imagine quite what it would mean like to live or to do the next step. And really interesting, I always found this sort of amazing. His boss said, I have hope for you yet. And his boss said, there is a place in Arizona, I'm going to send you for care, and I'm going to pay for it, and I'm going to keep my job, I'm going to keep your job for you as long as you're there. And he went down to this place called the Next Step Fitness, which was a place that does rehabilitation for people who suffer disabling accidents, and to teach them how to start to use their muscles and regain strength and other coordination. And a year and a half later, not smoothly, that young man walked out. Next Step Fitness was funded and created by the Reeve Foundation, which was created by Christopher and Dana Reeve. Now, what is Christopher Reeve most famous for? Superman, right? The man of strength and speed and skill and wisdom and undying hope in people. When Christopher Reeve was thrown from his horse and paralyzed, he lost all sense of himself. Not only who he knew he was, but he lost that sense that he couldn't be who everyone else thought he was meant to be. And his wife held him and loved him and said, "We are not ready to let you go. I need you to imagine a new life." And he did. And they began to imagine how to help other people and other families who were facing that moment like him. And so Christopher Reeve and his family discovered a new life with new purpose. Like the bird who became the bunny, his life before and after were quite different. He was transformed in who he understood himself and his mission and being in the world to be, and yet he had a life. And so I ask us again, as Unitarian Universalists who both enabled miracles for others and received them in return, what should our relationship with miracles be? Could our sense of improbable hope be like the little slender crescent after a new moon, beginning to grow in the sky of our horizon? As we listen to the beautiful music from the choir today, this Easter prayer, 300 years old it has been spoken, and 100 years ago it was put to music by an atheist. There was something in that skeptical man who thought these words should be beautiful enough to hear. May they be an invitation for all of us today. Amen.